Walking without skin. Managing adversity with vulnerability.
Pain is wrong, every inch of my heart like an open wound. I can't go on, I'll drown if I don't stop the bleeding soon.
And that mentality of not letting them affect me, because they had imprisoned my body, but I refused to let them imprison my mind. The single biggest lesson I learned in prison was true forgiveness.
Where can I find some protection to prevent this ongoing infection? I'm walking without skin. Walking without skin.
You are listening to Walking Without Skin, the show where we encourage our guests to be vulnerable, to share their voices with authenticity, to tell their stories from the heart. We will talk about hope and recovery, about overcoming loss, changes, challenges, and adversities. We will walk without skin.
How will I know when it's safer? When every step feels like sandpaper. I'm walking without skin. I'm walking without skin.
And here is your host, Lois Wagner.
Hi, I am Lois, your friend for forgiveness and the creator of Walking Without Skin. I have a book with the same title, Walking Without Skin. And today I have the pleasure of chatting to Rusty Labuschagne. Rusty is a life coach, author, and motivational speaker with a unique and horrific story. As a successful and self-made Zimbabwean businessman in 2003, without a body and against police evidence, Rusty was wrongly convicted of drowning a fish poacher, and he spent 10 harrowing years under horrendous conditions in Zimbabwe's prison during Mugabe's rule. Oh, hi, Rusty.
Hello, Lois. Thanks for having me.
Thank you so much for joining us and for being willing to share such a dark story. But before we get into your story, please can you tell me what you understand by the words walking without skin?
I don't know much about it, Lois. I've got to tell you.
So what does it mean to you? What do the words mean?
I think walking in faith.
Interesting. Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Without skin. Yeah. Walking and being guided.
Super. Thank you.
I get
for
that from it.
A lovely interpretation.
Yeah.
So, Rusty, I want to discuss your recovery from your ordeal and the lessons that you can share with our listeners. But obviously, it would help if you gave an overview of how you landed up in prison and what were the challenges that you faced from the unbearable conditions all the way to the deprivations that you faced. So if you'd share some of that background, it would be great.
Well, Lois, first of all, I'm a French Huguenot. My ancestors are French Huguenot. They had settled in the Cape between 1688 and 1691. And in 1913, my great-grandfather trekked over 1,000 miles from Daar in the Northern Cape to West Nicholson in southern Rhodesia, which is now Zimbabwe. And that's where my life started. I went to boarding school at 6, 200 k's away. You can imagine a little boy at 6 years old, 200 kilometers away from his folks. And then I lost my dad at 12, went through the Bush War throughout my teens. And I'm painting a picture, Lois, of somebody that has learned resilience. Because I believe that resilience is learned. It's not something you're born with. Fortitude you're born with. You're either big and strong or you're not. But resilience is being able to bend and take the knocks and bounce back. And it was a tough upbringing. The war environment and being mad about rugby and water polo, both rough sports, created a wild, hardy character. And that's And I think that with boarding school set me up to deal with what I had to go through. And I left school. I mean, losing my dad at 12 changed our lives completely. So it was a very humble beginning. I left school working in the fitter and turning business, but I was playing national rugby at that time. So I'm not an indoors person. I'm a country boy. And that was okay until 18 months. I couldn't take anymore and I had to get out to the bush. And I was offered an apprenticeship as a learner guide. And I went into the safari industry. Within 5 years, I realized that I could make as much money as these guys I was working for with only having a few clients. So I started my own business. And to cut a long story short, I took a lot of risks and I was very successful. I was very blessed in that. And by the year 2000, I was flying my own aircraft, had 5 safari concessions, a fishing resort in Lake Kariba, several huge properties in Bulawayo in Zimbabwe. So I was living the life. I was flying high, thinking, I was bulletproof, full of confidence. And let me get to the incident. In December 2000, during the land invasion chaos, not many people understand the injustice that was going on in the country, not only on the farms. There were people driving into safari concessions, removing the clients and the operators from the camps and taking over. Others refusing to pay rent in the cities. I mean, it infiltrated everywhere, and it was no different in the fishing resort I was in. It was a constant issue. It was a very remote fishing resort, and all the safari operators are responsible for anti-poaching, whether it's fish or wildlife. And I chased 2 poachers in my boat with a friend of mine, and they were notorious poachers that I knew. And it was 5:30 in the evening, and I had no intentions of driving them 2 hours to the closest police station and back when my clients were there with me. So my intention was to scare them off. And I drove my boat towards them, and the wake of my boat tilted their boat, causing them to jump out into the water, which was about 1.5 meters deep, and they were about 3 meters from the shore. And they soon scrambled to dry land. My friend and I then watched as they ran away into the bush and thought nothing more of it. The following day, the police arrived and accused us of drowning one of those poachers. Cut a long story short, I was framed by the poacher, the police, and the courts in an ugly, very politically motivated conspiracy and sentenced to 15 years in prison, of which 5 were suspended.
So before we go on, what about your friend? Was he also accused?
He was, but he got a $10 fine and was set free because he is not driving the boat. And that's all in the book. I've written a book, Beating Chains, and the injustice that took place in the courtroom is all in black and white. And if people want to Google it, they'll Google my case. My name versus the state. And my co-accused was Walter Ryan Claassen, and we call him Spike. And it's all there in black and white. And it did get very political because there was a judge that tried to help me that was related to the president at that time. And he got thrown in jail, not impeached or anything like is normal. And when he was released on bail pending trial, he slandered the president, the Minister of Justice, and the whole system in front of CNN, Sky News, and BBC, who were all in the country at that time reporting the land grab. So then the war was on between the president and the judge. He was related to the president and appointed by the president as a lawyer to be a judge. So he didn't augur well with the other judges either. And the only way that he could be convicted was that I was guilty. And that was the bottom line. And it was part of my dealing with getting through there mentally, Lois, is those people that put me there were under instructions from the top. It helped a lot in my forgiveness, where in the beginning I was so angry and eaten up with the people that actually are involved, like the police, the judge, mainly those two, obviously the poacher, but he was used by the police. That helped me a lot when I looked at the big picture. When you go in there and you're innocent, there's a lot of questions. Why me? What did I ever do to deserve this? I go through my childhood. I wasn't an angel by any means, but I certainly didn't deserve that. And then I thought, it's a foreign place. It's somewhere that no one's ever been unless you're a criminal. And you think, do these people feel the pain I'm feeling? Are they the same as me? And then I thought, well, maybe I've been put up to be protected because I was in the foreign currency business, and there were a lot of on the edge deals that were going on with big politicians as well. And I thought, well, maybe I'm there to be protected. And then I thought, maybe I've been put here for a purpose. And I always taught my children that everything happens for a reason. And now I had to walk my talk and accept that there is a reason that I had to go through that. And that's the only way that I could mentally accept that I had to go through that. But the one thing I want to point out, Lois, is that with this pandemic, for example, the fear of going to prison and the fear of COVID is 10 times bigger than actually going there. And it's, in my view, it's because you don't have a direction. You don't have anything to tackle. And once you're convicted, okay, this is what I need to do. And it's dealing with it, getting through every day. And once you're into that and you're in prison, life in prison or in Las Vegas is still just life. It's what you make of it, no matter where you are. So I never let that get to me. I've always been a positive guy, but when you've got to find happiness in even the smallest things that happen in prison, you grow. When you go in there, like I said, flying high, thinking you're bulletproof, they crush you. They crush your confidence, your spirit, your soul, everything.
What was one of the happy moments that you had in prison?
We used to laugh and joke and fool around and play practical jokes on one another because it made us feel good. And we encouraged each other during our daily exercise routines and sport and supported one another on emotionally tough days. There were many good men in there that helped me continuously, keeping me strong, positive, and as happy as possible for prison. Something that I'd like to point out is that one thing I always said to myself, and I'll never forget, because when you talk to a God, they make you crouch down. You have to be seen to be below their eye level. And they won't acknowledge you at all. So as you approach them, they say, Garapasi, which means get down. And then otherwise they ignore you. But I always said to myself, don't lower yourself to be affected by them. Because sometimes they'd say, polish my boots or roll over on the filthy dirt. And you'd have to roll over or polish his boots. And I'd say to myself, polishing boots, that's no problem. Roll over anytime. But I know who I am and I know who you are. And you'll be in here forever, but I'll be going home one day. And that mentality of not letting them affect me, because they had imprisoned my body, but I refused to let them imprison my mind. And I think that's an important lesson for people that are going through a hard time or being suppressed by either governments or employers or whatever,
Set your mind free, absolutely. So just briefly, some of the horrors that you faced in prison.
When you go in there, first of all, you have to strip naked. It's like in the military. So when you walk into the maximum security exercise yard, which is a huge 20-foot concrete wall, you walk in naked. And not everybody though. A lot of us did, but not everybody did. And I think there was a bit of a discrimination thing, not a color discrimination, just depended who was on duty and how they were feeling that day. And just to point out, I think that the color of my skin gave me an advantage in the prison. Whereas people would probably think being white and the only white guy in there, because I was the only white guy, would be the opposite, but it wasn't. it was the contrary. But you walk in naked, and it's a terrifying thing, let me tell you. Walking in stark naked with a thousand black guys there watching you and just crowding around you the whole time. Then you crouch down naked and the guards question you and about family, business, my crime, where I came from, everything. And it's very, very humiliating. And then I was led up, they gave me my clothes, which was a short sleeve white shirt and a pair of drawstring white shorts. And you're only allowed one set of clothing at any one time in prison. And they control everything you wear, eat, drink, read, write, hear, say, everything is controlled. And that's hard to get to. I had 54 guys working for me. So when you're in control of them and all their families, and it's not control, it's responsible, to suddenly being told what to do all the time by these guys, it's tough. Anyway, they gave me my clothes and I was led up to my cell. The cell was 13 meters long by 3 meters wide, and we were 78 guys in there. If you can imagine, talking about social distancing, having 13 inches, 33 centimeters, the one guy's nose is right by the back of your head, and the back of another guy's head is right in front of you. So, that personal space it disappears. So we were packed like sardines. We all faced the same direction, with legs all crossing over in the middle. When you turned over, it was all together.
Who determined when you all turned over? Who decided that it's now time to turn?
Yeah, if you don't turn over, then someone will breathe in front of you. So as soon as someone decides to turn, everybody just turns. That's just
must have smelled terrible in there.
Yeah, the ventilation was not good at all. Yeah, and that was the whole prison. Often, my sister would visit and other visitors would visit, and they'd just say the worst thing was the smell. As you come in here, you just smell the smell because the overcrowding was ridiculous. And obviously the conditions, the prison was built in 1956. So the gutters were all leaking sewage and it was a dirt floor. And all of that was blown everywhere. The TB rate was unbelievable. I think at one time, out of 1,000, 110 guys had TB. So, and then in my first 6 years, Lois, because I went in April 2003 until March 2009, I watched over 2,200 guys die. That's just where I was. And mainly from malnutrition. It was during the Zimbabwe dollar crash when there was no food outside of prison, never mind in there. And then there was a cholera outbreak in 2008 and 9. And I was in a medium security prison at that time, in Harare Central Prison. Out of 1,200 of us prisoners at Harare Central Prison, 432 guys died in 8 months. That's more than 1/3 of us. I remember one weekend, 11 guys died. It was unbelievable. And when someone dies in your cell and you're trying to save him the whole night, and it happened many times, it stays with you. It's a tough one. I remember playing cards on the tarred floor of the crowded exercise yard one day, and a guy sitting next to me rolled over dead. No one around us moved. So we just turned a little, because there was just people everywhere, and carried on playing until prisoner hospital staff collected him. That's how terrible it was in there. There were people dying everywhere. And you could smell dead people continuously day and night.
Oh, how dreadful.
Yeah. But Lois, one thing I like to do in the webinars that I do is not to paint a picture of feeling sorry for me, because I came out of there a different man. I came out of there a much, much better person. Now, before prison, I'd built quite an empire, but it was all about me, and more and more and more. And when is enough enough? I had no purpose. It was just greed and arrogance, I guess. And now it's about inspiring and changing lives. And the difference I'm making in people's lives now far outweighs the millions I was making before. And I just want to point out that no matter what hardships you're going through in life, just remember you're being prepared for where you're going. God has a plan for you, like he had for me. And I can honestly say I found the Lord in prison. And obviously I had a lot of questions up until 7.5 years in my time in prison. I prayed like crazy in the courtroom, nothing happened. Just to go back a little further, my mom and my sisters were strong Christians, but I was too busy building my empire and worrying about me. And then, and I respected them for that, but I was just too busy. I was too greedy. And in prison, I prayed like crazy up through the window into the clouds, and nothing changed. And then in prison, going through all those hard times, I prayed hundreds of times to go home and nothing changed. And then going through, so many people dying, washing our clothes in the toilets at night. My fiance left me after 4 years. I mean, everything was going wrong. And those praying in the exercise yard were the biggest hypocrites in prison, praying one moment and up to the most immoral behavior the next. So I just thought, where's the Lord? And then I had an incident on death row. They put me on death row for a cell phone misdemeanor. But I'll get to that because it's quite a story. But the Lord showed me that day that he is there. And when I look back on it, it's very hard to accept and understand back then. But when I look at it all now and see where I'm going now and how he has helped me since I was released, it's beyond coincidence. It's unbelievable. And when I pray, and I'm talking about times when I've needed a lot of money and somebody has just given it to me with just free. And you just think, how? And then, there's huge things that I can't talk about now. I'm under an NDA that I'm involved in to do with helping people. It's massive. Not only that, there's a TV series that we're looking at that's at quite advanced stages, but it's all in his hands. It's out of my hands. And I can tell you that when you pray, it works. I feel it, I see it, I get confirmations of it all the time. And my precious wife, I thought that I had found my soulmate before prison. I found Sandra. I found her. She makes that very clear. 3 years after my incarceration. And I had scars that I never thought would ever heal. I had an emptiness deep inside I never thought would ever fill up. And she has healed me and filled those, just brought an inner peace with her, not only who she is, but her spiritual ways, just doing the right thing. And she has really opened my eyes to the power of the Lord, and the way we live now is completely on faith. And it's such a different feeling once you feel that and accept it. I can just say that I'm the happiest I have ever been, and I have definitely found my soulmate now.
There's so much that we can talk about, but just briefly, tell me about the death row incident.
Yeah, Lois. My sister brought me food one day. That was in 2009. And she asked me, I was in a medium security prison, and she asked me if I would like an iPod. So I said, well, what's an iPod? She said, it's a thing that plays music. So I said, well, how big is it? So she indicated this small, flat little thing. So I said, well, how many songs does it play? She said, oh, about 1,000. I said, no ways. So where do you put all the CDs? That's how much technology had advanced in just 6 years I'd been away. It was amazing. And then this little thing arrived under the salad the following day. And about a week later, a cell phone was sneaked in too, one of those cheap little cell phones that you couldn't dream of in a maximum security prison. And everything was going perfectly until about 3 months when someone, an envious prisoner, reported me. After an unexpected search, unbelievably, through some quick maneuvering with on-site guards, Nothing was discovered. But I was sent to solitary confinement anyway for 2 years. That was extremely lonely. But after experiencing that precious little link to the outside world, I had to get my phone back, and I did, which made a massive difference. 18 months later, everything going perfectly, one of the friendly guards approached my spiral in my door and whispered, "Russ, they're coming for your phone." And there's no way of getting a phone out of there. But someone had brought me a protein powder about a month before, and it had to go through security and the doctor and hospital, whatever. And when it came in, I'd never seen it before. So I opened it and broke the seal like a silver seal, tasted it. When I put the seal back and closed it, the next time I opened it, the seal had stuck. So I thought, no, this is a perfect place to keep my phone if I need it. So that morning I broke it, opened it, broke the seal, took half the powder out, wrapped the phone in plastic, put it in, replaced the powder, the silver seal, closed it. 6 o'clock, the guards arrive. And what they do is they make you strip naked. Then you walk out, you jump with your legs open like you're hiding something. And then you walk out stark naked into the courtyard. I mean, there's female guards, everything. It's quite humiliating. And they do the search. After the search, I come back in and everything is upside down everywhere. But my protein powder, still in good shape. My spirits are all high. 5 minutes later, I'm summoned to the security office. So I walk in there and there are 4 guards standing, one seated behind a desk and an empty chair. I hadn't sat in a chair for 7.5 years. Oh. And the guard says, "Take a seat." So I sit down. It felt good. He says to me, and I knew when he told me to sit on the chair that there was a problem here. He said, "Do you have a girlfriend called Karen?" So I said, "No." I said, "I had one before prison called Karen." He said, "Okay. When did you last talk to her?" I said, "Long ago." He said, "Are you sure?" I said, "Yeah." They handed me a letter addressed to me from Karen. "So nice talking to you on the phone the other night. You sound so positive."
Oh, no.
Yeah, after some intense questioning, this thought just came to me, and I said, "No, Karen was having lunch in Bulawayo, and she met this lady, and they started chatting, and soon realized that they both had boyfriends in the same prison. So the lady said, 'Well, let me call my boyfriend who's the guard in there. He can call Russ, and then you can have a chat.' So I had a story. But after I couldn't tell them what the guard's name was, they didn't buy it, but they couldn't prove anything. And they were furious. I mean, they called in Central Intelligence. I mean, it was a big story. And about an hour later, they escorted me up to the officer in charge's office. And when you go up there, it's big, big trouble. And I walk in there, and there's like 15 big brass officers all standing in a half circle. Officer in charge behind his big desk, and my empty chair in the middle. He says, "Take a seat." So I sit down. He said, "If you don't tell me what that guard's name is, your life in this prison is going to change." And him and I got on really well. And I said, "Officer, I don't know his name." And then the question started. How old was he? What rank? Where did you make the call? How long ago did you make the call? And I answered as best I could. And then one officer, head of the soccer, he said to me, "Do you want to talk to the officer in charge on your own?" So I said, "Yes, please." And they all leave. And I was good friends with them, so I know why he said that. They all leave. I closed the door. I said, "Officer, we've both been through hell. We watched hundreds of guys die. I've donated endless stuff to the prison service: soccer balls, volleyball nets, soccer boots, and uniform for the squad." I said, "Can't you just let this one go?" He said, "Russ, I don't care about you, but I want that guard's name now." So I said to him, "Officer, I don't know his name." And he got angry. He said, "Okay." And he calls the guards. He said, "Put him on death row in the dark cell." So they escort me over to the condemned section. And the cells are 3 meters by 1 meter, same as my solitary confinement. But it was the dark cell, because the only vent was covered by a staircase and the electric light didn't work. They made me strip naked, gave me a 5-liter container, cut off at the top of the toilet, same as solitary confinement, 3 disgusting lice-ridden filthy blankets, and a 1 liter of water. They locked me in there for 23 hours and 45 minutes a day. So I was allowed out 5 minutes in the morning to clean my teeth, 5 minutes at 10 o'clock to have a shower, 5 minutes at 3 o'clock to prepare for lockup. It was cold, lonely, and dark, like being buried alive. Desperate, on day 6, I got on my knees and I prayed. And I'll never forget the feeling of like warm water being poured over me and a total sense of calmness. I sat on the floor, leaning against the wall. Within 30 minutes, I faintly heard my Afrikaans mate shouting from the soccer ground, "Hey, Ras, everything's okay, my mate. Don't worry. Everything's okay." So I jumped up. I said, "Hey, fool." He said, "Don't worry, Ras. Everything's okay." So I said, "Okay." Lay down on the concrete, looking up at the darkness. Within 10 minutes, I unlocked my door. And that noise that goes right through you. They chucked me my clothes. They said, "The officer in charge wants to see you." So I go out into the blinding sun, my hands over my eyes, across the courtyard, up the stairs to his office. And his exact words were, he said, "Hello, Russ." I said, "Hello, officer." He said, "Have you remembered the guard's name yet?" I said, "No, officer." He said, "I'll tell you what I'm going to do. I'm going to leave it in God's hands. You can go back to your cell." And at the exact moment when I was praying, my sister was paying him $200 to get me out of there. So there is a God, and he looks after me and every single one of you. You just have to ask him. And that was the turning point in my life as far as my spiritual life went. It was too big, and I felt something I'd never felt before. It was huge.
Oh, that is such a fabulous story. What was the first thing you did when you were released?
I had a braai with a bunch of mates.
What did you appreciate the most about being free?
A soft bed, a hot bath, a sip of a good wine, catching a fish, or a spontaneous cuddle from a loved one. Because you don't touch anyone. So, and I'm an affectionate guy, so just to hug friends and family and loved ones, it was. There's something that people overlook is the power of love, and sadly, the media is full of all this negative hate, and they only sell negative stuff there. I think we've lost love in the world, and I just wish that there would be more love and less war and hatred. But the media is the biggest problem.
What are the lessons that you've learned that you can share with people who obviously have not experienced the same horrors as you, but have their own sort of prison? What advice or lessons can you share with them?
The biggest lesson I learned, Lois, is forgiveness. The power of forgiveness is something else. The humiliation of being labeled a murderer and terrible conditions were extremely hard to deal with, as was the pain of my bitterness, anger, hatred, frustration, and revenge for what they'd done and were doing to me. I hated them bitterly, and initially would lie there for hours, wishing every terrible thing on each of them in turn: the poacher, the police, the judge, the ministry, and all who were involved in my conviction. Then one day, I was struck by the realization that they'd all forgotten about me long ago. Here I was, consumed by the unfairness of it all, and they, blissfully unaware of the evil I wished on them every day. In the end, I was only hurting myself. I was carrying all that in my head and beating myself up for nothing. The single biggest lesson I learned in prison was true forgiveness. And for me, it was bigger than anything I could have achieved on my own. True forgiveness was inspired by God Almighty, and so was letting go. It was a huge weight off my shoulders. And I learned to live in the moment from then on, because the past was too painful and the future full of unkept promises. So I just dealt with each day as it was. I learned to have faith, because no amount of worrying was going to change what I was going through. If you have anger or resentment towards anyone in any way, it will eventually destroy you, because that is what those emotions do. They steal from you. They steal happiness and freedom. And people often ask me, how did you forgive them for what they did to you? It's easy to say that, but how do you do it? And I remember walking in the exercise yard, and I was tired of all the anger, hatred, and bitterness. It was draining me daily. And I looked up and I just said, Lord, take care of them and let me get through this road that's been put in front of me. What goes around comes around. They will get what they deserve. And this was when my faith was still, very rocky. And I remember the feeling of like just an instant release. And that stuck in my head, that feeling. And the amazing thing, Lois, it wasn't a gradual thing. It was an instant mindset change. It's like I had a secret that I was holding that was eating me up for years and years. And finally, I just said it. It was like, well, it's gone. It's out. And that's what it felt like. Like I owed a whole bunch of money and someone came to me and said, here you go. And it was the right amount. And he said, it's a gift. It was that feeling, just like it's gone. And that's what forgiveness does. You can look at it in two ways. You can forgive, forget, and move forward, or you can remember, retain, and regret. The choice is yours.
I can relate so much to that. 14 years after I was brutally raped and attacked, I went to the prison and I forgave the rapist. And I've still not been able to explain that true feeling other than it really, really set me free. In fact, the subtitle of my book is From Fear to Forgiveness to Freedom. So I can relate very much to the power of forgiveness.
Sure.
I mean, I had to forgive one person. You had to forgive our whole system. So it's really remarkable. So congratulations on that, on finding that freedom and that power. Rusty, if you could have a billboard on the side of the street, what would you put on your billboard?
Live every day live every moment for the pleasure of the moment.
Such sound advice, absolutely. I just want to go back a little bit to what you missed when you were in prison and what you enjoyed. I read or heard somewhere that just touching a tree and seeing color. Tell me a little bit about that.
Yeah, Lois, being a country boy, growing up in the bush on a farm, my heart and my soul is in the bush. And when you're confined to concrete for all those years, it's tough. So I spent endless hours just dreaming and fantasizing about, all the times that I'd spent as a free man. People don't appreciate freedom. And it's only when you have your freedom taken away do you realize how important it is. And that for me, when I come out and I see how people create their own prisons out here, and you just don't appreciate picking up shells on the beach or listening to the birds sing. Those are beautiful things. The sound of rain on a corrugated iron roof. They're beautiful, And people have lost. It happened to me, Lois. I was grabbed by the hunger of money. And money is evil. The love of money is evil. We all need money to have a good time, but don't let it control you. And there's something about it that makes you feel that you have power or something, and you tend to forget about like family and structure and people in our lives that mean the most. And very sad. Very sad.
Yeah. And what prompted you to write your book?
Lois, Zimbabwe is not as free as South Africa. So if I'd written my book shortly after my release, I believe I wouldn't be here today. Once Mugabe had been removed, I felt safe enough to write it. And I wrote only what I experienced. I never wrote anything that was hearsay. So as long as I can stick to the truth, and if I'm questioned, I can prove what I wrote. And I have so many witnesses that went through exactly the same thing. So I needed the justice to be put on paper, to be recorded. I feel that hopefully that injustice will be revealed in a much bigger way when things change. And I believe things are changing now. That it'll never happen to other people. I wasn't the only innocent guy. There were many innocent guys in there. And the conditions were horrendous. I mean, I explained a little bit, but there are a lot more terrible, terrible conditions. And some of the things that happened in there was just something else. And they don't need to. There's no reason for that. It's not a punishment term. It's a rehabilitation. And I don't think they can spell rehabilitation there. It's just the beatings and cruelty by the guards. It's disgusting. And most of them, 98% of the guards are ex-freedom fighters. So they're used to killing people. And that's who runs the prison. So what do you expect, you know? We need to, there's no one that's qualified, like psychologists, psychiatrists, to deal with people that need help. And I spent hours and hours, years and years, trying to help people and understand what makes them do what they do. Some guys I managed to reform and change, but some of them you never want to see out here. They're beyond.
I've got a campaign called BRAVE, and I've used the word BRAVE as an acronym to describe qualities that people should have to prevent bullying, harassment, violence. And it's designed really to eradicate gender-based violence. But if we can teach those qualities to all the children out there, they'll grow up into decent human beings who won't have that violence or that harassing attitude, that toxic attitude. What does the word brave mean to you?
I'll answer that question, but when you talk like you did there, what makes me, then I've seen it because I lived with the guys that grew up as criminals. They grew up as criminals because you've got people that earn 220 million a week playing soccer, and you've got 9 million people dying of starvation in the world. It's disgusting how people live compared to how people squander money. So the contrast in the human being is despicable. How that can be, and it's the governments are responsible, 100%. The squandering of finances and letting people, live like worse than animals. But getting to the word brave, I believe that, and I'm not saying that I'm a hero, but I believe that there's a hero in everybody. And only when you're pushed to a certain limit with adversity are you able to release that hero or release the resilience that is in you, the good, the deep, strong power in you. And not everyone has been tested. But one thing I can tell you, Lois, is that when you're tested with adversity like that, and you have to dig really deep to find solutions to get through there, you grow. You learn lessons others never have to. And as long as you can take the good and leave the horrors behind, you'll end up a better person. You can't be a good sailor if you don't go through the storm. Yeah. So brave.
Well, you're just such a great inspiration and a great example to everybody out there, even those who haven't faced such horrors as what you have faced. As you said, everyone's in their own prison. They create their own prisons. And just to be able to be in the moment and to enjoy. Right now, I'm sitting out, the wind is blowing, the trees are rustling. It's so beautiful out there. Just to enjoy that moment and be in the moment is so important. And then obviously forgiveness is just the ultimate release from everything. Yeah. So what next for Rusty?
Like I mentioned earlier, there are big plans for the future. But my wife and I's ambition and aspirations are to make a difference in the world, to inspire as many people as we can. whether it be on TV or on platforms around the world. I believe that we can make a difference. And I think that the Lord will play a huge part in that, and that I have been prepared for making a difference. I had to go through what I did and I lost everything, but that's my goal. I could be in the safari industry back in Zimbabwe making much more money than I'm making now, but I have a why, I have a purpose, and I've had to sacrifice, but I believe that sacrifice is worth it. At the end of the day, everything is going to be fantastic, and I can feel it. I really can. I live with such peace inside, and my visions of big things are there. And the Lord has placed that inside me, and no one will take it away.
And what is so wonderful is that you have such a supportive and loving wife at your side.
100%. Keeping me in check.
Rusty, how can people find your book or reach out to you?
So my book is in 72 stores around the country, exclusive books mainly. And then on my website for people, abroad, you can download it as an ebook on my website, www.beatingchains.com, not breaking chains, beating chains. And then my motivational speaking. I'm talking all around the world, almost every week, doing keynote speeches virtually. And it's making a huge difference. I'm getting on some really nice platforms. If you want to reach me on that, my website, or my email address, rusty@beatingchains.com. Very simple. I'll be happy to entertain anyone.
Right, fantastic. So guys out there listening, please do reach out to Rusty, do get hold of his book. And I also invite you all to contact me on walkingwithoutskin.com. You can book a free 30-minute consultation where we can discuss your journey through life or your journey through healing. And I invite you all to join me to forgive and to fly free.
Thank you for listening to Walking Without Skin. We would love your feedback, opinions, suggestions, and ratings. Please share this podcast far and wide to encourage more people to share their stories with vulnerability and authenticity.
I wanna live. I want